Welcome to Audiobook 365 Story.
The 10:15 train left Paddington on May 7th, 1847. In one first-class compartment, there were 4 passengers. 2 of them were interesting. The lady had smooth, white skin, dark eyebrows, long eyelashes, and eyes that seemed to change color. She had a big, pretty smile with teeth as white as milk. She wore a simple gray dress with small buttons and a Scottish shawl. Her clothes fit her neatly, and she looked calm and beautiful as she read a book. Across from her sat a young man, about 25 years old, who was an officer in the army. He had short, black hair and a neat mustache. His smile was warm, and he looked confident but not proud. He talked quietly with his friend, another officer, about women. He glanced at the lady now and then, but lowered his voice when he noticed she was reading. At one station, the friend got off the train after making a silly bet. He bet £10 that the officer wouldn't kiss one of the ladies on the journey. The officer accepted the bet, though it wasn't a very good idea. After this, there were only 3 people left in the compartment. At one stop, the lady dropped her handkerchief. The officer quickly picked it up for her, and they exchanged a few polite words. Later, he bought a newspaper and a magazine to read. The jokes in the magazine made both the officer and the lady laugh, and soon they started talking. At Swindon Station, the officer helped the 2 ladies with their meals. One of the ladies went to another compartment afterward, leaving the officer alone with the pretty lady. The officer became more charming, and the lady grew quieter but more curious. Suddenly, the officer looked out the window and smiled. "We are close to the box tunnel," he said. "Do you always smile near the box tunnel?" the lady asked. "Always," said Captain Delignan with a smile. "Why?" asked Miss Haythorn. "It's a joke," he replied, and told her a story. A husband and wife were in a train going through the box tunnel. It was very dark. After the tunnel, the wife said, "George, why did you kiss me in the tunnel?" He replied, "I didn't kiss you." The wife said, "You didn't? But I thought you did." Captain Delignan laughed, but Miss Haythorn did not. The train entered the dark tunnel. "Oh!" Miss Haythorn exclaimed. "What is wrong?" asked Delignan, moving closer to her. "I'm scared," she said. "Don't worry." "I am here," said Delignan. "You are very close to me, Captain Delignan," she said. "You know my name?" he asked. "I heard you say it earlier." "I wish we were out of this dark place," she replied. "I wouldn't mind staying here longer if it means I can comfort you," he said. "Don't be silly," she replied. Suddenly, there was a strange sound. Miss Haythorn gasped, "Ee! Ee! What's the matter?" someone nearby asked. "Open the door. Let me out," she cried. There were hurried whispers, and the door was shut firmly. Miss Haythorn's scream wasn't loud enough to be heard clearly because the train whistle blew loudly at the same moment. After the tunnel, Captain Delignan sat quietly, wondering if his behavior had been proper for a gentleman. When they reached Bath, he opened the door with a serious face. The 2 ladies had to walk past him. Miss Haythorn looked at him with a shy but hurt expression. The other lady glared at him angrily. Then they left, and the journey ended. Captain Delignan was lucky to have Major Hoskins as a friend. The Major was older, serious, and respected. He didn't enjoy things like billiards or cigars. Instead, he valued proper behavior. Delignan happily told Major Hoskins the story of what happened in the train. The Major, however, did not laugh. He listened quietly and then said, "I once knew a man who lost his life for doing something similar. And he deserved it." This made Delignan's face turn red. The Major added, "That man was 35. You're younger, 21, I think." 25, replied Delignan. "That's almost the same." "Listen to me," said the Major. "I will, if you advise me," said Delignan. "Don't talk to anyone about this. Also, send White the £3. Let him think you lost the bet." "But I won the bet," Delignan protested. "Do it anyway," the Major insisted. Though he didn't like it, Delignan followed the advice. He paid the money and stayed quiet. A week later, he went to a ball. He wasn't impressed by anyone there until he saw a beautiful woman. He stared, thinking, it can't be, but it is. It was Miss Haythorne. She looked even more stunning, like a shining star. Delignan couldn't speak to her. She danced with others, but didn't notice him. One man, in particular, caught her attention. He was not handsome, but she smiled at him. Delignan felt jealous and angry. Who is that man? He wondered. He went home, dreaming about Miss Haythorne and feeling bitter about her smiling at someone else. For 2 weeks, he tried to find her again but couldn't. Then, one day, a lawyer's clerk came to visit him. The clerk said Miss Haythorne was taking legal action against him for insulting her on the train. Captain Delignan was shocked when the lawyer's clerk told him Miss Haythorne was taking legal action against him. He tried to talk to the clerk, but it didn't help. At least he learned her name and address. Delignan waited by her house for days, but didn't see her. Finally, one afternoon, she came out and walked along the parade. Delignan followed her, hoping to catch her attention, but she didn't look at him. After a while, he gathered his courage, took off his hat, and asked to speak with her. She stopped, blushed, and listened as he apologized. He said he was very sorry for his behavior, and he was already ashamed. He begged her not to make his embarrassment public. She shrugged and said, "How silly they are." Encouraged by her response, Delignan asked if she could forgive him someday if he proved he had changed. She said she didn't know and left, saying she had to prepare for a ball. Delignan decided to attend the same ball. There, he got an introduction to Miss Haythorne. She acted as if they had just met, but she was kind and friendly. That night, Delignan realized he was in love. Over the next few weeks, he did everything to be near her. He danced where she danced, walked where she walked, and even went to her church. He also got to know her uncle, Captain Haythorne, who started to like him. Delignan noticed Miss Haythorne often looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. 3 months after the box tunnel incident, Delignan visited Captain Haythorne and asked for permission to marry his daughter. At first, the captain seemed unsure, but after stepping out of the room briefly, he returned and said, "It's all right. You have my permission." When Delignan was leaving, he saw Miss Haythorne in the drawing room. She blushed, tried to laugh, and then cried a little before smiling again. At the door, they called each other George and Marian for the first time. Soon after, they were married. On their honeymoon, they traveled by train. Marian wore the same simple, lovely clothes as before, and George sat beside her this time. Marian, George said, married people should tell each other everything. Will you forgive me if I admit something? Yes, of course, she said. Well, do you remember the box tunnel? I had a bet with White. He bet 10 pounds against my 3 that I wouldn't kiss one of you two ladies. Marian smiled. I know, George. I overheard you. What? You heard me? That's impossible. And didn't you hear me whisper to my companion? I made a bet with her too. A bet? What kind of bet? I bet her a pair of gloves that if you kissed me, you would be my husband. George laughed. So, you weren't that angry with me after all. But why did you bring the legal case against me? Marian looked down. I was afraid you would forget me. Never, George said lovingly. Oh, look. We're entering the box tunnel again. But this time, there were no screams or surprises. They were happy, married, and quietly enjoying the ride together.